Welcome back to Anelle and Jiho, Part 27. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Today's question for you is, in your language, how do you say blessing? Write it in the comments below. I'd love to see the different answers from around the world. The cool night air met them as the studio doors closed behind them. The world outside seemed quieter, as if even the city wanted to give them a moment to breathe. Jiho's hand found Neo's almost instantly, like it always did. Not rushed, not searching, just knowing exactly where it belonged. She glanced up at him, the studio lights still in her eyes, and there it was. That smile he had tried to hide during the last part of the interview, the one that said she had just stolen his heart all over again. The driver opened the car door, but Jiho didn't move right away. Instead, he leaned close, his voice low, warm against her ear. "You know, I'm still not over what you did back there." Neo's eyes softened. "The drawing?" He chuckled. "Not just the drawing. The way you held yourself. The way you looked like you belonged there, under those lights. Like the world should see you every day." Her cheeks warmed. "You're making it sound like I planned all of it." "Maybe you didn't plan it," he said, "but you were born for it." They got into the car, but the space between them didn't cool down. If anything, the warmth grew thicker, a quiet pull in the air. Jiho kept glancing at her. Not quick glances, but long, unashamed looks, like he was trying to memorize every part of her face before the next red light turned green. Neo noticed. "Why are you staring at me like that?" she teased, resting her chin on her hand. He smirked. "Because I can't believe you're mine." His voice dropped even softer. "Because every time I look at you, I think, how did I get this lucky?" Her heart skipped, and she looked out the window for a moment, trying to hide the way that made her want to cry and laugh all at once. "You make it sound like I'm some miracle." "You are," he said simply, "the only one I've ever had." The car rolled through the city, lights streaking past the windows. Neo could feel the tension building, not the kind that pushed people apart, but the kind that made it impossible to wait. Jiho's hand slid into hers again, his thumb tracing circles on her skin. Every touch felt like a sentence he wasn't saying out loud. When they finally pulled into the driveway, Jiho didn't wait for the driver to open the door. He stepped out quickly, came around to her side, and before she could take his hand, he scooped her up. "Jiho!" she gasped, laughing. "What are you doing?" "Carrying you in," he said, grinning like a boy with a secret. "I can't wait to have you inside with me." She covered her face, half laughing, half embarrassed, but she didn't tell him to put her down. His arms felt too good, too sure, like they'd been made for exactly this. Inside, the lights were soft, the air warmer. Jiho didn't set her down right away. He walked her through the hallway as if she weighed nothing, her laughter bouncing off the walls. "Put me down, Jiho," she said between giggles. He shook his head. "Not yet, I'm enjoying this too much." When he finally set her on her feet in the living room, they stood close. So close that her breath brushed his collar. He didn't step back. His hand stayed on her waist, his other hand lifting to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "Do you know what I kept thinking about the whole ride home?" he murmured. "What?" "How much I wanted to kiss you the second we walked in the door." She smiled, her heartbeat suddenly louder in her ears. "So why are you still talking?" That broke whatever restraint was left. His lips met hers, slow at first, then deeper, hungrier. She melted into him, her hands sliding up his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart under her palms. His kiss wasn't rushed. It was deliberate, like he wanted her to feel how much she meant to him in every movement. When they finally pulled back, they stayed close, foreheads touching. Jiho was breathing a little faster, his smile softer now. "You make me feel like I'm 17 again." Neo laughed quietly. "And how's that?" "Like I'm falling in love for the first time. Only this time I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm never letting go." She rested her hands on his shoulders, looking into the eyes of a man who could make a whole crowd cheer 1 hour and still look at her like she was the only person in the world the next. They didn't move toward the bedroom right away. They just stood there for a while, holding each other, talking in quiet voices about nothing and everything. He told her how proud he was, She told him how much his presence had steadied her during the show. They laughed over small moments the cameras didn't catch. But eventually his hand found hers again, and with a small smile he led her upstairs. The night was theirs, and neither of them wanted it to end. The morning broke cold and gray over the city, the kind of light that made the glass towers look sharp and distant. Inside his small office, Taeho sat over a bank of monitors, his coffee long gone cold. He ran a quiet sweep through open networks and public edges. Nothing noisy, nothing that would trip alarms. It was part of the silent assignment he had taken from the king: watch from the shadows and step forward only when it mattered. A small red alert blinked in the corner of one screen. An outbound data burst from inside JIHO's house, made on a staff handset that shouldn't have been using a restricted line. Not a gate sensor, not a false ping. Deliberate. Taeho's fingers moved fast. He pulled the device ID, cloned the cloud token, and opened the most recent sync. The metadata showed late-night calls and short voice notes to a single contact saved under a coy label. Director Y. He scrubbed one clip and boosted the audio. The name was clear enough the second time. Yura. His jaw tightened. So there was a line from inside JIHO's home to Yura right now. But he needed to know if this was new, or a pattern. He widened the search, digging into older employment records. One name stood out, a different maid who had worked only at JIHO's grandmother's house. Dates lined up with the weeks when JIHO and Neo were in Botswana. That period ended with the grandmother's sudden hospitalization for a mild cardiac event. The cause had been marked undetermined. She recovered. Later, JIHO moved her in with him. There were no cameras at the grandmother's home back then, so Taeho went after what he could get, the maid's phone backup from that time. He cracked the archive, sifted the call logs, and opened a string of short, nervous voice notes. Yura's voice, low and firm. Just a small pinch. In her tea. She won't taste it. Do it when no one is watching. The maid, frightened. I'm scared, but yes, I understand. He cross-checked that day's hospital intake notes. They mentioned traces of herbal compounds in the system, dismissed as likely harmless, not seen as the cause. It didn't take much imagination to connect the dots. Harmless wasn't the point. Weakening was. The pattern was clear now. Today, a current maid inside JIHO's home whispering to Yura. Before, a different maid at the grandmother's house taking orders from Yura to slip something into tea while JIHO and Neo were away. Two maids, one puppeteer. Taeho closed his eyes for a second, then opened them and stood. Enough watching. Time to move. He already had the cover ready. A field technician from the same security company that had installed JIHO's system before the Botswana trip. The story was simple and believable. A red alert had flagged on their end. He needed to recalibrate the grid and run a physical integrity check. He'd asked to see the study. He'd run a live scan in front of JIHO. And when the screen lit on a staff device in red, he would show it and decide, in that room, how much of the truth to reveal. He took his coat, locked the door behind him, and headed out. This was no longer a quiet audit. It was the first step in containing a threat that had already touched the person JIHO loved most after Neo, his grandmother. And if Yura had placed one maid before, and another now, she would try again. Not on Taeho's watch. It was a quiet morning at Kang JIHO's villa. JIHO was already in the study with Insu, their conversation broken by the constant vibration of incoming calls. Each one was about Neo's televised appearance from the night before. Her design presentation had unexpectedly gone viral, stirring interest and speculation across the city. In another part of the house, Neo had gone to her sister Tumi's bedroom. The two sat close, their voices a mixture of excitement and disbelief as they talked about the whirlwind of yesterday's events. They drifted into talk about Tumi's upcoming graduation, wondering whether it would be possible to make it to Botswana for the ceremony. The tone was warm, intimate, the kind of sisterly talk that belonged to quiet mornings like this. Outside, the low rumble of an engine signaled the arrival of another presence. Taeho stepped from his black sedan, the weight of the small tablet in his hand matched by the weight of the information it carried. A man of precise movements and watchful eyes, he crossed the drive and was quickly shown inside. The study's double doors opened, and Jiho looked up from his desk as Taeho entered. Insu turned as well, curiosity flickering in his gaze. Taeho introduced himself as Taeho from the security company, and Insu introduced himself as Insu so that Taeho caught the name. Jiho gestured for Taeho to sit, but Taeho remained standing, his voice steady as he explained that his overnight checks had uncovered deliberate breaches in the villa's security network. Without going into personal history, he laid out his credentials in a way that showed quiet authority, enough to earn Jiho's attention without seeming boastful. Insu watched in silence, recognizing the skill behind the controlled delivery. When Taeho finished his initial outline, Jiho surprised him by saying he could speak freely, even with Insu in the room. That single choice told Taeho what he needed to know. This was not just a business associate. Insu was someone Jiho trusted deeply. Taeho moved closer to the desk, placing his tablet between them. He began to show footage and data patterns, tracing the path of a recent security breach. The images shifted until one alert stood out, a ping from the previous night linked to a younger maid in the household. She had connected her device to an unauthorized relay point. The implication was enough to draw Jiho forward in his seat, his expression tightening. After a few moments of silence, Jiho asked if Taeho could also examine the company's systems. Taeho nodded, but explained that to see the full, unaltered picture, they would need to go to the source, not the computer room overseen by office staff, but the basement level where the security wiring was housed. There, away from interference, he could connect directly and uncover anything hidden. Before they left, Taeho suggested that Jiho change into something less conspicuous. If they entered through the underground levels, it would be best that no one noticed the CEO arriving. Jiho agreed, excusing himself briefly before returning dressed down in dark jeans and a simple jacket. The plan was set. They would leave in separate cars, Jiho with Insu, Taeho in his own sedan. Once in the basement of Kang Group, Taeho would connect his laptop to the core wiring and show them exactly how the breach had been carried out, and by whom. For Jiho, it was already clear. This was not just another consultant passing through his life. This was someone who might soon become the shield for everything, and everyone he valued most. The air carried that crisp stillness before a turning point, the kind of silence that hinted the day would not end as it began. Taeho stood by his black sedan, his tablet in hand holding evidence that would shift the ground under Jiho's feet. His eyes were alert, hiding the weight of the information he carried. Before getting into the driver's seat, Taeho connected an encrypted call. On the other end, King Jihoon's deep voice was calm but attentive. Taeho reported what he had discovered. Security breaches, deliberate and precise, threaded into Jiho's daily life. The king listened, his silence sharp, before telling him to give Jiho every possible protection. A man who gave so much to the community without ever taking credit, he said, deserved to be guarded like a treasure. He admitted there was something about Jiho, something unexplainable that drew him in. Perhaps it was his quiet kindness. In the other car, Jiho drove while Insu rode beside him, the city skyline slipping past. They spoke briefly of the previous day, but the talk soon shifted. Insu teased him about his plans for Neo, suggesting he had been holding on to a proposal for too long. Jiho laughed, saying he wanted the right moment, something unforgettable. Insu agreed, but reminded him they also needed to deal with the company's security. The recent leak wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a warning. Jiho nodded, saying that Taeho might be the one to help them lock every door. When they arrived at Kang Group headquarters, Taeho was already inside, greeting them without ceremony. Moments later, dressed in a plain jacket and cap, Jiho followed Taeho through a restricted service entrance. They descended into the basement, the air cooler, the lights dimmer. Taeho used a coded key card to open a heavy steel door, revealing rows of network racks and hardwired connections. Here, the company's security system breathed without interference. He set his laptop on a side table and connected it directly to the main line. The screens came alive. Taeho began pulling up files, showing JIHO the source of the infamous breach, the one that had streamed their private design board meeting onto a private server. First came the official feed. Polished angles, clear audio, nothing suspicious. Then he split the screen into two. One side remained the official company view. The other side was raw footage from a hidden source. The image tilted slightly, its perspective low on the table, coming from a phone placed in front of an older board member. In the official footage, the phone's screen appeared blank, harmless. In the recovered feed, the camera was alive, filming the meeting in real time, transmitting Neo's presentation and every private exchange to an outside location. Taeho explained how the man had mirrored the official feed, erased traces from the main system, and buried the signal under routine traffic. Then, with a few more keystrokes, he reconstructed the moment the recording began, showing JIHO the hidden screen lighting up without drawing attention. JIHO's eyes stayed locked on the frozen image of the board member. Insu watched in silence, fully aware of the skill on display. Taeho's explanation was calm, clinical, but the effect was sharp. JIHO understood immediately. This was no accident. It was betrayal, calculated and quiet. At JIHO's request, Taeho ran a check on the villa's security feed. Almost instantly, a red alert flashed. One of the younger maids had just connected her device to an unknown relay. JIHO's chest tightened. This was no coincidence. The villa and the company were under the same shadow. Back at the villa, the younger maid moved to a quiet hallway corner, answering her phone in a low voice. Yura's tone was steady, almost cold, as she told the maid she would be needed soon. She was to find an excuse to step outside when the signal came. The mission would begin then. The alert captured the moment in real time, the audio filtering through Taeho's system. JIHO stood still, listening to every word until the line abruptly cut. He didn't speak for a moment, then told Taeho to give him the code. Taeho removed his watch, entered a sequence, and linked it directly to JIHO's device. From now on, every alert would go straight to his wrist, no matter where he was. JIHO stared at the small device, then back at Taeho. It wasn't just the technology, it was the precision, the silent confidence. He stepped forward, placing a hand on Taeho's shoulder before pulling him into a brief but firm embrace. "Thank you for coming into our lives," he said quietly. The words held more than gratitude. They carried trust. And from that moment on, Taeho was no longer just a visitor. He was the shield JIHO had never known he needed.